Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about your work as a playwright.
Okay.
First, a little bit, we want to talk certainly about your most recent mature play, Atlas of Mud, but let's talk a little bit first about you and who you are and where you've been and where you've come from.
Sure. Well, I came to Iowa City to go to the University of Iowa Playwrights workshop, their master's program. I came here in 2005, but before that I had been living in Toronto for 10 years, working as an actor and as a playwright, and that's when I started writing. Like a lot of actors, you learn very quickly that you kind of need to do it yourself, and I wrote a one-person show. It was my first writing endeavor for the stage. It was a show, an autobiographical show about growing up on a goat farm. And I performed it at some fringe festivals, and it did very well. Got some great reviews, people were very positive, and I was encouraged to keep writing. So I kept doing that show and have subsequently remounted it, as they say, numerous times, and actually here in Iowa City in 2007 at the Riverside Theatre. But I also started writing other shows as well, and just found that writing was a way to feed an artistic need that I wasn't having fed as an actor. Partly because as a writer I could sit down at my laptop, anytime I wanted to, and work and have that feeling of artistic output. Whereas as an actor, you have to be in a show. Or
you have to get cast.
You have to get cast. You do lots of auditions and lots of time in your basement doing monologues.
And you have to take what's there.
You do. And I really enjoyed being able to have a little bit more control over my own. I mean, you don't get a lot of control, but a little bit more control over my own career, and then obviously the satisfaction of writing something that people respond to. It's an incredibly rich feeling, and I think if you actually are then turning around and performing that, that's a very unique experience. If I'm writing a book, I'm not there when somebody's reading it. I mean, maybe somebody might come up to me afterwards and say, "I loved your book," or if I'm doing a reading, that would be wonderful. But for the most part, I'm not participating in that. With a play, I am participating in it if I'm the actor, and that's a great feeling. I mean, on the other hand, a play is an incomplete thing, whereas a novel is a complete thing. So those are the other challenges of being a playwright. I still
need some help.
Theater is a collaborative art, and it doesn't exist only on the page.
Right. I guess that's why they spell it with a W.
Yeah.
R-I-G-H-T, right? So after you finished your time in the workshop, you took a head fake to Philadelphia?
I actually went the other way. I went to Denver.
Denver.
Yeah, I was offered a playwriting residency through the National New Play Network. Okay. And the residency that I was offered was at Curious Theatre Company in Denver. So I went out there for just a little under a year, and worked in the theater in their literary department. So I was sort of on the other side of the slush pile, which was interesting, and helping to choose the season, helping the artistic director by reading a lot of plays. And
sort of a screener.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a really interesting process, because obviously there's a lot that goes into what gets chosen. It's not just about what's great, it's also about economics and casting availability and the balance of a season and the audience and all that sort of thing. So that was really great, and I was able to pursue my own writing as well. And then my husband and I returned to Iowa City after that.
And have formed something called the
Working Group Theater.
Working Group Theater. Now, I take each of those three words seriously. I imagine you do too.
We do.
Talk a little bit about that collective, maybe you could call it.
Well, there are 4 of us now. We've grown and are continuing to grow. We all have a love of, I think, the big epic story but housed in a poor theater aesthetic. And that's not just because as theater artists we don't have big budgets to work with.
Right.
I think it's really exciting to, my favorite theater is actually a more bare theater. I think you leave space for an audience's imagination. So finding opportunities for those moments of beauty or deep emotion or humor that maybe come through the words or a fall of light as opposed to a lot of bells and whistles and that sort of thing. We're really interested in taking these, big plays, big ideas, big stories, but doing them in a way that's really visually exciting.
Right. First time I heard the phrase "poor theater" was in Peter Brook's book, "The Empty
yes,
Space,"
yes.
which is gracious, 40 years old now.
Yeah, but still really relevant.
I think so. Yeah. I'm interested to hear your answer to this question.
Okay.
As we start talking about Atlas of Mud, can you describe for us what kind of play Atlas of Mud is, or what it is about? It's not like you can say it's a story about an old man that tests his daughter and learns a hard lesson about love.
No. It's a play about faith, I think, in terms of larger themes. It's a play about faith, and I don't just mean a religious faith. I mean hope, faith in what we can't see, which is, the definition of faith really is belief in what you can't see. Faith in our ability to continue. As scientists, the world is facing a serious, very difficult future. I think most people have agreed to that now. That with global warming and flooding and environmental damage and all of this sort of thing, and so the play is set now, but at a more extreme version of now. So the first act is in a city that is being evacuated, but with the idea that the flooding doesn't stop. It keeps going and going and going, and one of the people who is evacuated is actually a scientist who has been working on this and has lost her faith in the scientific community's ability to find answers. And so she is struggling with that as she is being pushed out of everything that is familiar. And there is also this idea of religious faith, because I think at times of great trauma, at times of stress, that is when sometimes people lose a faith, religious faith, and other times people gain it. So there's a reverend character who is also struggling with it. He's trying to help people, but he's struggling with his own faith. Yeah, and they kind of come together and struggle together. But what happens in the second act takes place in the future, in an imagined future, when the world has flooded, like Noah's Ark. The idea is that the water doesn't go down after 40 days, and so everybody's living on boats, and out of the old faith, a new sort of faith is having to rise. It's really the only way that people, the survivors, are going to be able to go forward, is to kind of create a new story.
Let me ask you one different kind of question.
Sure.
If there was such a thing as a Hall of Fame for writers, what playwright, North American playwrights, would be in your Cooperstown for writers?
A Cooperstown for writers. Oh boy. Well, I love Naomi Wallace. Iowa grad. I think her work is wonderful. So inspiring, and I turn to it over and over again as inspiration, because I think she is somebody who is able to take. She writes about political situations. She writes about ugly, gritty stuff, but she's a poet. And she also graduated from Poetry Workshop, but she's a poet, and that lyricism and beauty is in her work and I really respond to that, because I think savagery, if that's a word, and beauty coexist. So definitely her. Oh gosh, Arthur Miller.
Yeah.
I love his work. I love Arthur Miller's work. It seems so simple and it's not. It's so true.
Which play do you jump to there?
I love All My Sons.
Do you really?
I'm so glad it's being produced here this year. Yeah, I really love All My Sons. And Salesman, Death of the Salesman. I mean, maybe I'm being cliche, but it's a great play.
It's kind of like Babe Ruth's bat. It's got to be in there someplace, doesn't it?
Exactly. She's not North American, but Carol Churchill, I would try and get into that Hall of Fame.
Would you?
Especially her newer work. A writer who just continues to evolve, transform. What she does with language is so fascinating.
And has had a little bit of a flirtation with science.
Yes, absolutely. And again, lives in it. Her work is very theatrical. Jose Rivera. I love his work. Magic realism, you know.
But you're going to gravitate toward things that have a kind of overt theatricality.
Yes, that's definitely, I swing towards that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My Hall of Fame would be very theatrical.
Would be very theatrical. All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you for talking to me about this.